I hired my first business coach around 2015. Not only was it scary AF, but it was also life-changing. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a really bad money mindset and I was so scared to invest in my business. But since then, I have never worked without paying a coach or being involved in some kind of mastermind. So I'm going to tell you which coaches and masterminds I've joined, how much I have paid for all of them, and what I got out of them, and then what either led me to leave that one and start a new one, or what led me to stay a little bit longer. The only thing I'm not going to include is the online courses that I bought, just because those are at a much lower investment and it's very do-it-yourself on your own time. However, I will mention 3 online courses that I purchased that I feel have stayed with me for years and years. The first one was one created by Brandon Gailey. If you're not familiar with him, he is the host of the Blogging Millionaire podcast. He also created Rank IQ. I honestly don't believe he has his SEO course anymore because he has transitioned to software, which is Rank IQ, and that is what I use when I write any blog post for my lifestyle blog, Christina All Day, or when I create content for clients. So I will link to Rank IQ so you can learn more about that. And then Justin Welsh's 2 courses. One, the Content Operating System, and the other one is the LinkedIn Operating System. Love his courses because they're short, sweet, and to the point. They're also like crazy inexpensive. I think I paid less than $200 for each one. So I will link to those if you're interested in learning more. Back to business coaching and mastermind. Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning and go to today. So let's start with the very first business coach I ever hired. Her name was Suzanne Evans. Now her business is called Drive. I didn't know who the hell she was. I actually learned about her because years ago, like when I left my TV job, I bought an online course about creating an online course. And I got this through Mariah Cause. And in that program, I met a woman named Lisa Simone Richards. She's been on Become a Media Maven before. And she lives in Toronto. She sent me a message and she was like, my business coach's business coach is having an event in Orlando. And I was like, okay, well, I've never met you in person. We've been speaking for years. So let me just meet you there. So I drove up to Orlando, we roomed together, attended like 3 days of this event. It was completely free. And at the end of day 2, Suzanne Evans pitched her coaching program, which at the time was called Thrive. It was $15,000 for the year. Now, let me tell you why I joined. I joined because she said one thing that resonated with me. And I think she even had a slide. And it showed an inconsistent income, like a wave. And she said, if this is you and your income is so inconsistent, then you need a business coach. You need consistency. And that was honestly at that time the one thing that led to me having so much stress, was that my income was so inconsistent. So I was like, okay, how much is her program? It was $15,000. And in my mind, I was like, well, I don't have $15,000 just sitting in the bank. So I've since learned that is like the worst way to look at something. Like when people go to college, they don't have tens of thousands in the bank. When you buy a house, you don't have hundreds of thousands in the bank. When you buy a car, many times you get a loan. Like just because you don't have money in the bank doesn't mean you can't afford something. It's like, where are your priorities? So I called my dad because I don't even think I had a budget on my credit card for this. Like I've never purchased something like this before in my life. So I was like, Dad, can you put this on your credit card and I will just pay you back every month? And that was the deal we made. I had payments every month for a year to pay off this business coaching program. So I said, I'm going to do every single thing this woman tells me to do because I don't want to waste time, I don't want to waste money, and I have to pay my dad back. So I did everything Suzanne and her coaches told me to do. She obviously had a team of coaches. It wasn't just her all the time. And in 6 months, I made enough money to pay my dad back in full. So I paid him back in 6 months. And then I went back to Suzanne and her coaching team and I was like, okay, what's next? And they were like, well, it usually takes a year for people to like move up to Thrive Elite, but you can do that now. And I was like, perfect, I'll do that now. So I paid with the money I made in 6 months to pay for Thrive Elite. So I did that. And I learned so much. It was a great program for like a new business owner because I learned so much about sales. And I was always one of those people that was like, I don't like sales. I hate sales, blah, 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 blah. But if you're not making sales, you don't have a business. You don't have any money. So I needed to learn this. This is where I learned money math. I'll have to tell you about money math sometime. It's like the best way for new business owners to make money. So I'll tell you about that sometime. But that's where I learned my money math. So I worked with Suzanne Evans for 1.5 years. And then after that, I moved on because I looked around the room that I was in and I was sometimes the smartest person in the room as far as people who were in the coaching program. I couldn't get a lot from most of the people in there. Now, there were some people in there, I've had them on the show before, Alexis, Jessica, like there were some amazing people in the group that I could learn from, but most of them I couldn't. So it was time to move on because I was no longer the dumbest person in the room. So that brings me to about 2018, and Pat Flynn puts out a call for applications to join his mastermind called Accelerator. This was about $20,000 to $22,000, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally want to join because I've already been on Pat's podcast once. His was actually the first podcast I listened to when I left TV news, and I was like, I want to learn what he does. I want to do what he does because remember, when I started this whole PR thing, I never really wanted an agency. I just wanted to teach people how to do it themselves and build an online course. So I was like, Pat's the perfect person to learn from. So I joined his mastermind, and I have to tell you, the best thing about his mastermind, besides of course getting direct contact with him, was the people in it. Talk about being the dumbest person in the room. I am 100% still the dumbest person in that room. And I say that because we're all in a Slack together. We still talk. They're actually putting together a mastermind event in the fall in San Diego like we did back in the day in 2018 and 19. But I learned a ridiculous amount from people in this group. Like, let me just tell you how cool some of the people in this group are. And again, a lot of them have been on the podcast. You have Cassidy, who makes insane money teaching people how to grow and keep succulents alive. You have Alex from Travel Fashion Girl, who not only has products she sells on Amazon, but like is an SEO master at a lifestyle blog, and that really inspired me. There's a Facebook ads expert in there. She actually has a bonus module in my online course, the Media Mentoring Program. Like, I learned so much from so many people in there. It was amazing. I loved that 1 year mastermind. But in that mastermind, I learned, and Pat even said something to me about my agency. And he was like, your agency is pretty cool. Like, you have guaranteed recurring revenue with these clients. And then I was like, let me focus more on the agency. Because at that time, I brought on a director of operations. I was no longer the middleman between the publicists and the clients. I had somebody to do that. So I was enjoying my agency a little bit more. And that's when I joined Jason Swenk's program. His program was called Agency Mastery, and it was a little less than $1,000 a month at the time. And I loved his program because it was specific to marketing agencies. Jason had a marketing agency. Everybody else in this mastermind had a marketing agency. And that is something that I want to give you as a tip. Like, if you are hiring any kind of business coach or you are joining a mastermind, I think it's so beneficial to go as specific as possible because it doesn't get more specific than a marketing agency. Like, everybody in there was dealing with very similar problems, and it was a perfect place to get referral partners as well, which admittedly I did not do an amazing job of. I should have focused on that more, but I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking of agency growth as far as what I could do day to day instead of building referral partners. I was in that mastermind for a long time. I would say at least 2 years. We had calls online, there were retreats, all of the things. It was great. I believe it's still happening now. So if you have an agency, definitely check out Jason Swenk's Agency Mastermind. And I will link to everything I'm talking about in the show notes on the podcast and in the description in the YouTube video as well. So if you want to check any of these out, you have access to everything. Moving along. Number 4, the fourth thing I joined, and I'm going to kind of combine 4 and 5 because they're very related. I joined Dan Martell's SAAS Academy, and then I joined Aaron Krall's SAAS Connect. Now, these two overlapped. I joined Dan Martell's because I got this brilliant idea in 2019 to create software to help people pitch to be a guest on podcasts. That is Podcast Clout. I have recently sold that software. Upcoming episode, I'll tell you all about how that happened. But I didn't know anything about software. I didn't know anything about technology. The only reason I created this software was because I repeatedly asked other software in the PR space to add top podcasts to their database, and they didn't. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll just do it myself. And then after I found the people who, by the way, I found in Jason Swenk's agency Mastery, I needed to know how to grow it from like somebody who knows about software. So I joined Dan Martell's program. And the thing I liked about it is that Dan Martell is so good at what he does. There was a Facebook group where there was so much help, but it was big. There were a lot of people, like there were hundreds of people in this group. And this was the first time I joined any kind of program where there were hundreds of people in a group. Like we would get on calls and there would be hundreds of people on the call. So it was a little big, but then about halfway through that program, and I will say also that Dan Martell's program was only $3,000 for the full year. So I wasn't really expecting a lot of one-on-one, but hey, he still does get on the call. He still does help you. He does have coaches who also assist, but he's very active in the group too, which for $3,000 a year is a hella good deal. At the same time, through his network, I was introduced to Krall, who was just starting a coaching program. So on the flip side, because his was brand new and it was beta, his was extremely inexpensive. It was $1,000 for like 6 months or a year or something, like something crazy. And when I would show up to the calls, sometimes I'd be the only one there because it was brand new. He was just starting it out, like testing it out, seeing things. And that's how I learned everything I needed to know about software and growing a software business. Now, as you'll hear in a future episode, my heart wasn't in it. I just kind of wanted the software. I didn't really want to spend time growing it and marketing it and selling it and all of the things. So I ended up just selling the business completely. But this was super informative. And if you have an idea for software, like get in Dan Martell's program, check out what Krall is offering now, because it's super important and you learn so much, even if you just have an idea and haven't executed anything yet. The sixth mastermind I joined was from Christina Galbato. She's somebody that I followed on Instagram, and I joined her mastermind for about $20,000 a year. And I got to tell you, the only reason I joined is because that year, the retreat was in Miami, and I'm like super close to Miami. So I said, okay, I'm going to join so I can go to the retreat. I met amazing women in there. Again, a couple of them have been on the podcast. Francesca, she helps people, women specifically, build a business through Airbnbs. Julie Krause, she is a stylist and helps people with their styling. And there are so many amazing women who do amazing things. Christina Scalera, she helps people with digital products. A lot of these people have been on the show before just because they're super unique and have an amazing expertise. So her thing is she helps people monetize their expertise. So when I joined, I was thinking with my lifestyle blog, Christina All Day in mind, because I was thinking, this is what I want to grow. Christina's done this. So I joined with that in mind. Like, I want to build this lifestyle blog. But then she's like, no, I think we should grow your online course because you have like a gold mine here. Like, you know this information. Your point of view is so unique from your experience in news that I want to focus on that. So she kind of like revitalized everything that I started with. Like, remember, I wanted to start with the online course, but then I went to the agency model. Well, now I'm going back to the online course thing because Christina was like, no, there is so much potential here. So I worked with Christina Galbato for a year in her mastermind. And then after that, it was time to go. I needed to try something new. And with that, I joined Rachel Rogers' We Should All Be Millionaires. I read her book, We Should All Be Millionaires, and I was like obsessed. I looked her up. I said, what else is she selling? I want to buy it all. And I joined her mastermind. It was $3,000 for the year. And there is a reason for that. It's not very good. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, Rachel is nowhere to be found. She's like nowhere to be found. Number two, there are hundreds of people in this group. Number three, nobody knows who you are. She's got an insane amount of coaches and the turnover is very high. There's a lot of calls, so I will say this, they will keep you busy with calls and things to discuss and go over, but every time you're on a call, it's somebody new leading the call. And you can't even speak on the call. You can type in the chat, but you cannot unmute and speak. So then when you're posting in the Facebook group with any questions, you have to reintroduce yourself. You have to say what your business is, because these coaches don't remember you because they're not involved on a one-on-one basis. They just don't remember you. They don't know who you are and what you do. And one time I remember I posted a question. It was about hiring a salesperson specifically. And the answer that I got from one of the coaches was so generic, it like wasn't helpful at all. So I asked her to elaborate specifically on certain parts, and she told me I needed to book a call and like pay for that call. So I was very disappointed in this group. There was a lot of turnover with coaches. There was a lot of turnover with people in the program. Unfortunately, I paid for a year up front, so I kind of like lost that money because I learned pretty quickly that it just wasn't that amazing for me. I think if you're a beginner and you're making like a couple of $1,000s a month, or maybe you haven't even made money in your business yet, it will be beneficial to you. But for where I was in my business at that time, like I needed a coach or like people around me to know who I was, what my business was, where I wanted to go, where I was now, like things like that. And you just don't get that in her program. So I like paid for it for a year, but I wasn't very active because it was kind of like a waste of time. I hate wasting money, but I hate wasting time. And it was like, okay, this money is out there. I'm not going to get a lot out of this. Like, let's just move on. So then I joined Josh and Jill Stanton's Wealthy Course Creator. Now we're getting to like recent times. This is like in the past year-ish, okay? And the reason I joined their Wealthy Course Creator Accelerator program is because it is so unique. And I was like, okay, this could help me with the online course. And listen to what they teach you. This is actually where my boot camp, Pitch Publicity Profit, came to be. So their model is create a small ticket offer. In my case, it's my Pitch Publicity Profit Bootcamp. It's just $37. And through that offer, I introduce you to my online course, which is $997. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking $997 is such a low enough price that you don't need something to like warm you up to it. But their methodology is that $37 offer will pay you back in ad spend. So then when you go to sell the online course, you're just always profitable. It's not, a lot of people, they spend a shit ton of money on ads, but then when they sell their online course, they're not as profitable as they would be if they didn't spend the money on ads. So their thinking is that you make this $37 on the front end, so then you're not losing money on the back end when you sell your online course. So anyway, that's what I did. I was in that program for 6 months, and that program cost about $9,000 for 6 months. Learned a lot, met a lot of cool people, and created Pitch Publicity Profit. Now, I did do 2 launches during my time there. I made all my money back. And I think that's important too. Like when you look at the cost of a program, like, am I going to make my money back? And don't just look like it's a 6-month program. Am I going to make my money back in 6 months? Because remember, you're learning things that you can use forever. You're meeting people that you could work with down the road. But in 6 months, I made my money back because I did 2 launches with Pitch Publicity Profit, and I sold a lot of those $37 offers. And then I have an order bump that were 5 of the exact pitches that my team has used to get people publicity. So then that's an order bump, and that's a $27 offer. And then on the back end, I sell my online course. So I made my money back. I just hated launching. I just did not want to spend all that time and effort to launch. So instead, I've turned my bootcamp evergreen. You can get it anytime at pitchpublicityprofit.com, and then you will be introduced to my online course at the end of that. So that is what I learned from Wealthy Course Creator. But after those 6 months, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to launch. I just want to be evergreen. Like it's just too much energy, too much time and energy. And I don't really like that part of online business. Now we're getting into the last 2. These are the things that I did in 2023. I joined Vanessa Lau's Supercharged. This was $25,000 for the year. And I joined because I kept seeing her on the internet and I was like, damn, she's smart. I like her. I like her vibe. And then there was somebody I knew, Rich Cardona, and he was in the program. And I was like, do you like this? He's like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. So I was like, okay, let me join. But I have to tell you, right after I joined, I had buyer's remorse. And I don't know what it was. I think it was because my goals are just different now. I don't want to spend all day, every day with a jam-packed calendar to make a bunch of money. I want an empty calendar. Like I want freedom in my day to do what I want, when I want, that sort of thing. So I had instant buyer's remorse because it just seemed like it was going to be a lot of work to participate in this mastermind to actually get things out of it. Well, guess what happened the week after I joined? Vanessa was like, I am burnt out. I'm shutting down my business. I'm going on sabbatical and I'm refunding everybody. If you are on my newsletter, then I sent you an email about this. If you're not on my newsletter, make sure you sign up. I will link to that in the show notes and description of this. But it was like shocking. And I was like, oh my gosh, what she did was so brave to like shut it all down. But I was like, phew, a little relieved. So then I took that as an opportunity to join something that I've been eyeing for months, and that is the lab with Jay Klaus. And that is what I am in right now. And I love it. So the lab is a community, a mastermind. We have office hours once a week. We have hot seats. We have a circle community where we can post anything for feedback, for help, whatever. And I love it. And this, I paid for the VIP version, which means I get a couple of extra calls with Jay one-on-one every year. But it was just $3,000 for the year. Now that is not going to be the price that you're going to pay, because I told him, I was like, Jay, you offer way too much value for what you're charging. You need to increase your prices. And there is a wait list. He will not accept more than 200 people at a time. So you do need to get on the wait list if you want to join this. I will link to that as well. Again, remember, linking to all of the things here. And I highly suggest you get on the wait list, because Jay is so involved in what he does in the lab that I get so much benefit and value from it. So let's break it all down, okay? We have from 2017 to 2023, 10 different programs. Now I gotta tell you, I'm a little like programmed, mastermind, coached out at this point. I'm just gonna stick with Jay in the lab for a while. My goal is ping pong back and forth between like online course, agency, lifestyle blog, and then I have the software. But now I just have a couple of things, and it's like, listen, let's just put everything in a container and treat it as its own and do one thing until you hit that one goal and then move on to the next. Like, that's my mindset now. So I'm working with Jay. Everybody in the community, again, you can learn from. They're all super cool. There's amazing people you can learn from in that group. Lots of people do lots of different things. They have different expertise. So that's what I like about it. My 10 business coaching and mastermind programs that I have spent money on. I haven't done the math on this, but I would venture to guess it costs maybe similar to maybe what college would, but it's so much more valuable than college. Isn't it funny that like people will spend tens of thousands of dollars on college and they don't know what they're gonna learn, who they're gonna learn it from, what that person's expertise is. You're literally just doing it for the degree to try to get a job. And it's like, unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, it's like, is it really worth it anymore? I feel like the ROI of college has plummeted, and the ROI of like these business coaching masterminds has really increased. Anywho, that is the inside look. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. If you have questions about anybody or any one of those, please let me know. Happy to offer more specific feedback if you're thinking of joining anything. And then also, don't forget, I got my own thing going on at the Media Mentoring Program. So I will link to that in the show notes as well if you want to join my mentoring program. It is an online course, but it also comes with a Facebook group. And yes, I am the one in the Facebook group. I don't have other coaches. I don't have other teammates. Like, I am there to help you execute everything. And then if you want to level up, there are ways we can do that after. Okay? Thank you so much for watching, for listening. If you haven't yet, tap subscribe, tap follow, leave me a positive rating or review, comment on the video if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll see you next week.